Nvidia shares, they are flat right now following a modest beat in its second quarter results. This comes as China pushes to triple its AI chip production for tech self-reliance. Joining us right now is Chris Miller, Tufts Fletcher School Associate Professor and the author of The Chip War. Good morning to you. I think the big question this morning is, what do you think the prospect is really that Nvidia is going to be able to sell into China? And if they are going to be able to sell into China, whether it's the H20 or this more advanced chip that they'd like to sell, how much they may have to pay or revenue share effectively with the U.S. government?
Well, the challenge NVIDIA faces is that they're squeezed on the one hand between Donald Trump and the other hand, Xi Jinping, and they've got to navigate demands of both of those governments. The U.S. government has signaled they're willing to let NVIDIA sell, but China's now investigating NVIDIA's H20 chips for alleged security issues. You know, the Chinese tech firms want to buy NVIDIA's chips, but the Chinese government, they're driving towards self-sufficiency in semiconductors. And so long-term reliance on NVIDIA is something the Chinese government doesn't want to see.
So when you hear, for example, Jensen Huang say that he wants to sell into that marketplace, even with this more advanced chip beyond the H20, do you say to yourself, that's a good idea? That's a bad idea? If you were President Trump, would you allow that to happen? And that's putting aside whether you think the Chinese government will want that or not.
I think the U.S. government right now is trying to strike a balance between enabling NVIDIA to sell, capture that revenue, and also trying to restrain China's AI companies like DeepSeek or ByteDance or Alibaba, which have benefited immensely from the ability to buy high-end chips from the United States. And there's a really active debate right now in Washington as to what the right balance is to strike. The president, I think, has taken an unexpected turn in arguing that if there's a revenue share component, that will address some of the security concerns. And I think we're beginning to see in Washington and Congress, for example, skepticism about whether revenue shares really address the core security concerns that are brought up by the growth of China's AI ecosystem.
You know, what do you make of the revenue share idea, if you will, and how do you think that changes the dynamic for a company like NVIDIA, not just in China, but frankly for other countries and other tech firms?
Well, it does muddy the waters in terms of whether the U.S. regulations are about security or are about economics and revenue generation. And I think for tech firms, it's a dangerous road to go down because it ties them more closely to the U.S. government at a time when they're trying to argue to their customers that they're independent actors, responding to regulations, of course, but otherwise trying to sell their best products to any buyers around the world. And so for tech firms, they don't want to have to be closely tied to governments. They don't want to have to be in a position where their sales are directly adding to one government's revenues, but both Trump and Xi want to pull NVIDIA in their direction, and they both got tools to do that.
Well, speak to this, though. How much of this is about trying to persuade President Trump to allow NVIDIA chips to effectively be exported versus what it sounds like is now becoming the bigger issue, especially if we have a revenue share? And I don't know how you think that changes the dynamic, whether the Chinese government, despite whatever protestations it may get from Chinese firms, to say, we don't want these chips here.
Well, I think the Chinese government has never wanted foreign chips in their market. The challenge is that they can't produce enough domestically to fill that gap. So there are firms like Huawei that are trying to race ahead as rapidly as possible to produce enough high-end chips to fill the Chinese market. They're not there yet. Right now, they're pretty far away from meeting domestic demand. But the moment they can, the Chinese government will have no concern whatsoever about locking out Western tech firms, as they've done in every other market: automotive, solar panels, machine tools. They're waiting to they can get self-sufficient in chips, and the moment they do, they're going to cut out any Western firm from that market.
Right.